Welcome to another episode of the YXE Sports Podcast. Of course, we are live on Facebook on a Monday. Typically, we go on Tuesdays, but our lovely guest could only do it Monday. And we like to think that we're flexible here at the YXE Sports Podcast. So big thanks to everybody tuning in on the Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar Facebook page, the YXE Sports Podcast Facebook page. We are on No YXE. And a big thanks to everybody who is listening to the audio version of the YXE Sports Podcast. As we come to you once again live from my bunker, my home office, whatever you want to call it. Leave your comments, questions, concerns in the comments section on Facebook because we have a jam-packed show today. Feature some local stuff, feature some not so local stuff. It's just a great time to be a sports fan. And we are going to bring in former voice of the Saskatchewan Rush. They've been in the news this weekend and they didn't even play. We'll get to that. John Fraser joins us from his home in Saskatoon. And okay, John, before we get started, for everybody that's listening or everybody that's watching, just give us the rundown of what's on your shirt so we get that out of the way.
This is why I love you, Matt, that you were let me go there early. I've been in self-isolation the last 5 days, so this is the first time I've put on my fancy clothes, and only the fanciest for your podcast, my man.
Yeah.
The 108th Grey Cup champions right there, my Winnipeg Blue Bombers. If you expected nothing less out of me, you should expect me at least showing the Bombers some love. And while you give me this platform to brag about things in the shot, of course, my fantasy football trophy that I always make sure is predominantly displayed as I am our league champion and commissioner. So there you go. That
just seems like the league is rigged. How does a guy from Ontario, because you were born in Ontario, how does a guy from Ontario even end up cheering for the Bombers? How did that work?
Well, I'm from northwestern Ontario, so I'm only about a 5-6 hour drive to Winnipeg.
Okay.
My dad's family's from Winnipeg. My cousin Mike took me to a game. Must have been like 13, 14 years old. The old Winnipeg Stadium, the Kahari Jones, Milt Stiegel era, just another glory day for the Bombers way back in the early 2000s. It's just that experience swept me up. And I have been a Bomber fan ever since. And honestly, since starting my broadcasting career in Saskatchewan, it's been a lot of fun to be a Bomber fan in the land full of Rider fans. We've even gotten to the point where we've got the kids disagreeing on who they cheer for. So it's a lot of fun, and now they're actually good. So it makes all the pain worth it.
Well, you've been waiting a long time for the Bombers to be good, and that's just where we'll leave the CFL talk for now. We can come back to that a little bit, but
I appreciate
anyways,
you for that,
what's wrong with the Rush?
I think the biggest thing wrong with the Saskatchewan Rush this year.
Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's start with the news from the weekend. Of course, it was announced that the Rush relieved head coach Jeff McComb of his duties. And you and I had actually planned to come on and talk this week before this news even dropped. And then we were messaging each other on Saturday when the news did drop. But he was with the Rush since 2014. This year was his first year as a head coach. The Rush sit with a record of 4-10. Not like they're getting killed every single game.
No.
5 1-goal losses, I think it was, and then another 3 2-goal losses. So they were kind of right there. But what did you make of the news that came down this weekend?
I was a little surprised. I thought Jeff was going to get until the end of the season, only because this team is very much in next year mode. There is no delusions of a miracle run of getting into the playoffs. I mean, call it bad luck, as you mentioned, all the 1-goal losses, all the 2-goal losses. But on the same note, you can't go 0-5 against Calgary and San Diego and expect you have to win those games no matter what's happening. So I'm surprised that the move happened, especially GM Derek Keenan said it was one of the hardest things he had to do. And I believe that. If you look at the relationship between these guys, like coaching wise, they go back to the old Portland Lumberjacks, like way back when Keenan was coaching there. So a little surprised at the timing. I'm not surprised at the move. And this is of no disrespect to Jeff as a coach. I've gotten to travel with that team. I've gotten to know the guys. I've gotten to be a part of that team. And Jeff is a brilliant lacrosse mind. Jeff is a brilliant teacher. But I think the Rush needs something different behind the bench. And you look at the way that Derek Keenan coaches. If you watch Derek Keenan, he's very calm, very stoic until he doesn't need to be. And then he gets the guys fired up. Whether that's yelling at a ref, yelling at the other bench, whatever. He seems to have that ability to ignite that team. Jeff McComb is not that guy. Jeff McComb is a brilliant teacher of the game, a brilliant offensive mind. And I don't think he was that spark that you need sometimes in a 1-2 goal game. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons that I'll get into in a bit, but I think Jimmy Quinlan is going to be the associate coach moving forward. Jimmy Quinlan is going to be the coach next year, and I think this is a brilliant hire. Jimmy is respected by the players. He played with some of the players. And again, I can say this from being embedded with that team for the season and a half that I was, that Jimmy is so respected, and he's similar to Derek Keenan, that he's a spark plug. He is very much the guy that if the team's not going anywhere, he's going to get guys fired up. He's going to do what he needs to do. He's going to push those buttons. Just watch Jimmy Quinlan on the bench. There's some great, if you ever watch some of the Rush team videos, there's great slow-mo videos of Jimmy and his excellent beard just screaming his face off. So I think he's the right guy. And I was a little surprised before the year that it was Jeff over Jimmy, but Jimmy was coming back from, a semi-coaching retirement. I don't think he expected to come back, but he is here. And I think moving forward, he will be the guy. And this will be a smooth transition. He's a Derek Keenan guy. He knows these guys. He knows which buttons to press, and he's a spark plug. So I think he's exactly what the Rush need as a head coach.
Well, you go back to those 1-goal games or those 2-goal games. They lost to Halifax by a goal. They lost to Calgary by a goal. They lost to San Diego twice by a goal. They lost to Panther City by a goal. It kind of just seems that a lot of the, not blame, not fault, but it seemed like in a lot of those games that they ended up losing by 1 or 2 goals. They had the lead by a couple at halftime in a lot of those scenarios, or going into the fourth quarter, and for whatever reason, just couldn't close it out. That might be part of that whole spark plug thing. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, but also they were 1-7 on the road up to this point, right? They have 1 road game left. NLL, you got to be able to win on the road, and the Rush so far, just haven't been able to. I don't know what your thoughts on that is, but just the in-game adjustments didn't seem like they were there this year.
No, and that is part of it. The other thing too, it's funny when you're in the NLL, winning on the road is sometimes easier because getting to Saskatoon is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. There's reasons they can't sign guys here and there because it's such a logistical nightmare to get from wherever to Saskatoon. You're basically forced to sign guys that live in Calgary, Toronto, or even to a lesser extent, Vancouver. So that's part of it, that it's weird that their record is so bad on the road. I think the bigger thing is the uncertainty around this year and what the Rush had planned compared to what ended up being out on the floor is completely different. And there's nobody to blame for this. This is the realities of the pandemic year. This is the realities of, plans will fall apart. You got to think, coming into this year after the Rush basically were forced to trade Ben McIntosh because he's now living in Philadelphia. He's married. He's living in Philly with his wife. There's logistics. There's no way to get from Philadelphia to Saskatoon in any kind of time now, right? Largely thanks to the pandemic. So there's a move they weren't anticipating on making. I have very good sources that tell me an absolute superstar righty player that fits that mold was on the verge of signing here this offseason to replace Ben McIntosh, but it fell apart because of the uncertainty around the situation, and he didn't want to leave an organization he's been with for a while, right? There's another guy, Adrian Soroketti. They had signed him before next year. Before last year. Sorry, the canceled season, they had planned to have Adrian Soroketti. Well, again, Adrian doesn't live in Canada, so it's hard to bring him back. So there's another piece they planned on having. And then the unexpected retirement, essentially, of Evan Kirk. You lose your number 1 goalie to, again, logistics, because he is in training to be a member of the Ontario Provincial Police. He can't do that and fly to Saskatoon. So the team that GM Derek Keenan had built and the team that GM Derek Keenan had to put on the floor were 2 completely different things. And I think, to me, you put a Soroketti in the lineup, this right-handed shooting player who I can't name, even Kirk. To me, you take one of those 3 guys, put him in this lineup, they're probably 500. 2 out of 3, they're probably West Division champs. Like, it's this league is so good. And so even with the rapid expansion, this league is so good and so deep that if you miss a depth guy like Adrian Soroketti, it can make the difference. And especially if you're missing a goalie of the caliber of Evan Kirk, it can make a difference, right? So I think that's what the problem was this year. Was there was a blueprint, there was a plan, and the pandemic and some other things just made that plan fall apart, unfortunately. And now that I think we know that there is going to be a season, obviously next year and moving forward, that Derek Keenan has a plan. I have full faith in Derek Keenan, and to me, they're going to turn around. They're going to turn around fairly easily. I mean, again, you add 2 pieces, you win a 1 or 2 goal game, and here you're back in the playoffs.
Well, and that's the other thing too. This has just been a crazy year for all the off the field stuff. The fact that they didn't play last year. You mentioned about the logistics for guys traveling. Even in, a non-COVID year, sometimes it's still a nightmare to get guys to Saskatoon from wherever, or, I mean, there are stories of guys in their first few years actually just moved here for the duration of the season, right? Just because it was easier, right? I think Derek Keenan should get a mulligan on this year. I'm in total agreement with that.
Yep.
And then you look at the on-the-field stuff. I mean, the Rush are 4-10, like you said. Even if they're 500, even if they're a game or two under 500, they're probably right in the thick of the playoff race.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And everything can happen after that.
Well, and that's it. You get to the show, especially the way that the NLL playoffs are lined up. But it's a short series or it's a one-gamer. You're right. Anything at all can happen, Matt. And one stat I found the most fascinating, I think, looking at some advanced stats before I came on with you here, the Rush have not won a game while they're tied after any quarter. They've blown a couple leads, but they've also failed to come from behind a lot. So again, it's a missed pass here or there. If you've watched them, you can see they just look off. But I do think that Derek Keenan, especially now he's a full-time GM, you're really going to see him be able to work his magic, and you're going to see this Rush team. Oh, and by the way, as a total aside, kudos to the fans. We're still second in attendance. We have a 4-10 lacrosse team, and I know a lot of people that stayed away because of health restrictions and worries about COVID and all that kind of stuff. We're still second in attendance, and that's awesome. That shows that this is a great lacrosse community and continues to be so, and should stay that way forever. And I can't wait to get back there myself, probably next season.
You mentioned, the goaltending with Evan Kirk leaving. Obviously, he was the solidified number 1 guy for the past few seasons. The reins were handed over to Adam Shute. I don't know if he necessarily. I don't want to, harp on the guy. I don't want to, be harsh on him. To say that he underperformed this season would probably, in my opinion, be accurate.
Yes.
Derek Keenan went out and got a guy in Eric Penny to kind of solidify that goaltending. What have you kind of seen from Penny since he's been here in Saskatchewan?
More veteran calm. Eric Penny's a veteran guy. He's been able to bring that calm presence. Adam Shute will be the first to admit he gave up a couple not great goals here and there, those kind of backbreaker goals you're seeing in a 1-2 goal loss, right? Again, I don't think it's entirely on him. As I mentioned, you plan to have Soroketi, you lose Matt Hossack in the expansion draft, and you're trying to work in some new pieces defensively. Even though Jeremy Thompson wasn't an A+ defender at this point in his career, there's another guy where, he was another good depth piece that knew the system. They've been so hard up for a big right-handed shooter. They've had to use Mike Messenger up front a few times, and now he's not focused on defense as much as he was before. So the changes on D and the adapting, it didn't help that Adam Shute, this was his real first go at a starting job. And I feel bad for the guy that this is how it went. But, Eric Penny's a veteran. I think talent-wise, I think Schute's still the more talented goalie, but Penny has that veteran poise, that calm, that even if he gives up a meh goal, he's going to bounce back and solidify that position a little bit, which he has done lately. It's a little too late by this point.
Were you surprised that they didn't make any moves at the trade deadline? I know I found it interesting. The game after the trade deadline, they were talking to Captain Chris Corbeil, who's been the captain of the Rush ever since they were back in Edmonton. He was surprised that he didn't get moved. He's one of those veteran guys on this Rush roster. A lot of fans were, maybe hoping the Rush would make a move here or there at the trade deadline, but have faith, have trust in Derek Keenan. He's been in this game a long time. So what did you make of the lack of trade deadline moves from the Rush?
I was surprised as well until I started reading the post-game interview or the post-deadline interviews with Derek Keenan. Derek Keenan flat out pointed out that, okay, so there's 2 big UFAs at the end of this year. Kyle Rubish and the aforementioned Mr. Chris Corbeil, right? The way the NLL set up, that if the Rush were to lose either one of those guys this offseason, they're going to get a first-round pick, okay? So even if they had dealt them away, so let's say they had dealt them to a contender, let's say Chris Corbeil goes to Calgary, for example, okay? Calgary at the end of the year then gets that compensatory first-round pick. So Derek Keenan's ask was pretty simple. I'm getting a first if these guys leave. If they don't, I get to keep some of the best players in the game. And if they go anywhere else, somebody else is getting a first. So your offer has to start with a first-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was doing it. So that's, again, on the surface, you go, well, yeah, this doesn't make a lot of sense. They didn't blow it up. But when you look into it and go, oh, so, the season's kind of a lost cause anyways, and either you get to keep Rubish or Corbeil with a little bit more salary cap flexibility because they're on your roster, or you let one of them go and pick up a first-round pick that just wasn't there at the trade deadline. So I'm not entirely shocked. I do think, though, if and this is one of those situations that if you had any of those guys that were chasing a ring, it absolutely would have happened. Keenan is so tight with Corbeil, Matthews, Rubish, all those guys that if one of them had said, hey, Jammer, I want to go and win another ring, it would have happened. He's that kind of guy. He has that kind of respect for the players. But if the offers just weren't good enough, he was going to hold on to those guys because of that little bit of a loophole in the system.
Well, let's talk about the offseason then. You mentioned how Rubish and Corbeil are both UFAs, pending UFAs at the end of the season. We kind of just talked about how thin they were on defense this year. It's no doubt that, Corbeil obviously is a veteran. He's getting up there in terms of age, but he can still play. Rubish is a little bit younger. Maybe you haven't thought this far in advance. I'm sure Derek Keenan has, but where do you go this offseason if you're the Rush, considering the expectations that you failed to meet this year?
I think you go back to your original blueprint plan that you had coming into this year, that being a bona fide starting goaltender, or you go out and get a young phenom. The one guy I really want to see the Rush get is Laine Erushka. He's a young guy. He's a local kid. And I've been watching that kid play since he was playing junior A at 15 years old. He's a prodigy in terms of goaltending. Canada junior team. That's the kind of guy I'd like to see him pick up, a local kid like that. Outside of that, to me, you need a veteran goalie. You need a guy who's going to stop. You need one, if not two, depth pieces on defense. You need to bring everybody back. And then again, like a guy, like if you could bring back a couple Soroketis, I'd like to see if they had some way to get either Brett Midsky, Nick Belich, one of those guys back. And then you have to replace Benny Mack. You have to go out and basically open up. You're going to have more cap room than you've had before. And you've got now the purse strings of the Priestners behind you. I think that they need to go out and basically write a blank check, as much as you can write a blank check in the NLL, to a big right-handed scorer that has chemistry with Ryan Matthews. I would love to see him just throw everything at getting Curtis Dixon out of Calgary. I don't know if you do it, but Curtis Dixon out of Calgary, I think he's UFA at the end of this year. I think he's only in a one-year deal, but in terms of forwards, you get that guy. That allows you, Mike Messenger goes back to playing D. You basically replace Soroketti and Thompson on D. You don't need superstars on D. You just need some depth there and get yourself a guy that you know is going to be your goaltender. I don't know who that might be. I want to see Hirushka back here. I want to see him as the backup option. I want to see local kid get a chance to blossom into a star. Honestly, one guy I'd really like to see back, and I don't know if it would happen. I don't know what the relationship is like, but Aaron Bold's out of retirement. And,
he's with Halifax.
He's with Halifax. He's only played a couple games, but Boldy looks good, and he seems to be, he's in a really good space. If you follow him on Instagram, if you follow him on Twitter, I messaged him after his big win out in Halifax, and he seems like he's in a good headspace. And to me, you pair him with a young guy, and that's what you want for next season. So basically wish list 5 guys, replace Shatler, bring in a big righty, 2 depth pieces, and a starting goalie.
Well, and you go back to Bold, I don't know if he would necessarily be able to start at this point in his NLL career, but again, he's that veteran presence. But you mentioned following him on social media. I follow him on Instagram, and he is in the gym like all day, every day. And he's pushing 40 years old.
That's it. And I think, he's pushing 40 years old, but here's the thing, for logistics-wise, Aaron Bold would have the least wear and tear on him out of just about anybody. Guy lives in Edmonton. He owns Bold Athletics out of Edmonton. To me, as long as that, as far as I know and I've heard, it's not damaged. It's not, things didn't go badly when he left, but okay, so you're going to play 9 games in Saskatoon. You're a 2-hour flight from there. You're going to play 2 to 3 games in Calgary. So there's, even though you've got concerns about his age, well, there's 11 games in your year that he's right around the corner, basically, which is a luxury that a lot of guys don't have. Having a veteran guy like that just sitting in your backyard, and maybe you keep Eric Penny. Maybe you go with a Penny Bold tandem next year. I just, I don't think it's a break the bank position that they need to be in, because to me, if you're going to break the bank, it has to be to replace Ben McIntosh and get that big righty scorer in there in a hurry.
Of course, we are live on the YXE Sports Podcast, as we are every week. I was almost going to say every Monday, but that's just not true, because typically we do this on Tuesday. John Fraser, of course, joins us, former play-by-play guy of the Saskatchewan Rush, and it's all brought to you by Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar on the corner of Circle and Idlewild in Saskatoon. The MLB season's right around the corner. John and I are going to chat about that in a little bit. They're going to have everything Blue Jays. They're going to have daytime baseball on. It's going to be awesome. They still have NHL on. I can guarantee you the Leafs Lightning game is on right now at Wendell Clark's Classic Grill and Bar, again, on the corner of Circle and Idlewild. Just a few more things on the Rush before we move on, John. It's hard to argue with results since 2016. Despite fans thinking that they need to be perfect every single year, but you knew that a rebuild, I'll put that in quotes because it could be a one-off, but you knew a season like this was going to happen sooner than later. No?
Yeah, and I'm surprised it came this year. And I'm glad the fans are still showing up. I would say that people staying away, at least people I've spoken to, is far more COVID related than, performance related. I still think the team is putting on a hell of a show. And that's the thing that's going to ride the wave. And the beauty with the NLL is unlike what we saw for that 5-6 year stretch with the Blades, where the Blades were just like a crappy hockey team for a real long time. Basically after the Memorial Cup run to about recently, they still did a great job with game day. They did a great job in the community. You cannot say a bad thing about off ice, but on the ice they sucked. And I mean, let's not pretend that's not what
Which
it is.
In fairness to them, is typically the way that it goes after you throw all your money on the table to host the Memorial Cup. Obviously, the
that's
Memorial
exactly
Cup itself didn't go that plan, but that once you're done hosting the Memorial Cup, there's going to be some tough years ahead.
Well, that's it. And even if we're looking at the tough years for the Rush, the point I was getting at before kind of dumping on the Blades. I'm sorry, guys. I love the Blades. The Bananas thing the other night was awesome.
Yeah.
But a rebuild of the NLL is like 2 years.
Yeah.
Like you're not, that's the thing. If people are sitting going, oh no, this is going to be 3, 4, 5 years of mediocrity. It's not. It's the NLL. Like I said, there's so much talent out there. I don't think you could possibly see a dark ages per se or full rebuild with the Rush as long as Derek Keenan's in charge. And I think, whoever takes over for Derek Keenan at the end of his last contract will be another very well-respected lacrosse guy that has learned from Keenan and is friends with Keenan. And I don't think we're ever going to see that with the Rush. They have the financial powerhouse of the Priestners behind them. They have the attendance. They have the expectation in this city. Even if they went full rebuild, like I said, it's a 2-3 year process in the NLL, not the 5, 6, 7 years you have to sometimes see in junior hockey or even the NHL, right? There's so much talent out there. Find a guy or two. These guys always talk to each other. And especially too, it's quickly now becoming harder to play senior in the summer and pro outdoor, that you might see some more guys that don't play that senior lacrosse that go straight from the Premier League, into the NLL, which would just mean more talent for the league. Pick some of those guys up and you're laughing.
Well, and the other thing too, and you talk about the Saskatoon Blades, of course, the Broadskis sold to the Priestners after the Memorial Cup. Yep. The Urbans sold to the Priestners this past year. The Blades up until, recently have struggled on the ice, and it's easy to pick on the Priestner family here because as soon as they buy the Rush, they bought the Blades and the Blades struggled on the ice for how many years? As soon as they buy the Rush, now the Rush all of a sudden are struggling, right? But I think that it's just nothing more than bad luck. And I don't think, I don't know on what your opinion is, but I don't think that the Priestners deserve any shed of blame here for this season for the Rush.
Zero. They deserve absolutely zero blame for this. They basically, I heard when they sold the team, there was some concerns that, maybe they're going to change things. Maybe they're going to bring guys in. They went to Derek Keenan and said, "It's still your show.
Mhm.
This is your show. Like it always has been. This is your team. You're a Hall of Famer. Do the things you do and just keep it going." You're right. I think that the Priestners are just as cursed as seemingly I am whenever I pick anybody to win anything. I can tell you, I mean, I was in the building. I worked real close with Les Lazaruk for a lot of years before I retired from sports broadcasting, and the Priestners are nothing but first class, high caliber, A+ people, the kind of owners you want running both your junior hockey team and your professional lacrosse team. So anybody that's out there that puts any blame on the Priestners for this season, like I know we're a family show. If I was on my own podcast, which is less of a family show,
I get what you're putting down.
Exactly. So I won't say it, but anybody that thinks to put blame on them, just
you know what to do. Yeah,
you're wrong. Exactly.
Yeah. Of course, you're just, like I said, previous sports broadcaster, so you have a passion for a lot of different sports. One of the things that you and I were talking about just before we came on actually was the fact that there's going to be an MLB season. We had Linda Walker on a few weeks ago. This is when the lockout was still going on, but that has since been rectified. It's all good. You're a Red Sox fan. I'm a Blue Jays fan of, obviously, both in the AL East. So I said to you how we can talk about how the Blue Jays are going to dominate this year, and then we can revisit this in September when they underperform. But what are your thoughts on the AL East and the young Blue Jays and the Red Sox, who you said, and these are your words, you're very, very unhappy with them?
I have been basically remember when Rob Lowe went to an NFL game with an NFL hat a couple years ago? This is how mad at the Red Sox I am. Like, I am like, find me an MLB hat and I'll throw it on. Like the Mookie Betts trade, just like, you don't become a fan of a rich, big money team to watch your best player get traded away for peanuts. All because your soccer team's losing on the other side of the world. Your soccer team's losing, so you got to get rid of Mookie Betts. You have the best defensive outfield in the history of Major League Baseball with Andrew Benintendi, Mookie Betts, and JBJ, and they were all gone. JBJ is back, but I'm very upset with them. I'm very upset. And as a believer in science, to hear that a big part of their team, including Chris Sale, is not vaccinated, I'm having a hard time. Like, so I have simply said, buy me an MLB hat. I am going to be the Rob Lowe this year. Just yay, baseball. Let's go. So
it's back. Yay.
I love
one of those umpire hats.
That is exactly what I need, because even though I did wear my Red Sox jersey during my fantasy draft the other night, but I mean, that's more of I do have a vintage Blue Jays jersey in a closet someplace, but I think the Red Sox, I hope you remain cursed until you somehow bring back Mookie Betts, or, just stop getting rid of players I like. So, and go get vaccinated as well, too, if you could there, Boston Red Sox. So, those are my thoughts on the Red Sox. For your Blue Jays, and I'm sorry to do this to you, Matt, because
you have let's do the backstory behind this curse here thing, because this is a long time in the making. This has been a thing for a while. So give us the history, if you will, of the Fraser curse.
The Fraser curse is so real that remember not last year when the Bombers won the Grey Cup, but 2 years ago when the Bombers won the Grey Cup. I picked against them every single game just to reverse curse them, and it worked. I'm famous for picking either games or seasons or players that are going to perform well, and they're either befallen by like injury or just bad play, bad luck. Like the Fraser curse is legitimately real. I think I'm trying to think what the last one. I mean, the most famous one may have been Johnny Manziel, who I said would do really well in Hamilton, and then I mean that's not entirely my fault, but basically anything I have ever picked on the 3 Down Nation Greencast, my regular podcast, it's gone against it. So that's why now I just pick against the Fraser curse, and it seems to work, which is also why, despite, my vast knowledge and love of gambling, I've never made a dime sports gambling because I am just that cursed. Like, I honestly, I thought about putting some bucks down in Canada to win the World Cup. And I'm like, no, I should do it to every single other team that's ahead of them, because then for sure Canada will win the World Cup.
Right.
And y'all can thank me, football fans. So, so the Fraser curse is legitimate. It is real. So I apologize in advance for all the nice things I'm about to say about your Blue Jays.
Okay, well, I'm listening. Before we get to all the nice things you're going to say, James Grattan says that he's great in a football draft. So as evidenced by the
football trophy.
Yeah,
not a CFL draft, though, which is actually fantastic. James and I used to work together. James is a really good friend of mine. James had the wherewithal, knowing that I would fail spectacularly at our CFL draft, to find Randy Ambrosie at an event. This is before the season was over.
Well, it's funny you should mention that. Sorry to cut you off, because he just wrote a follow-up comment that says, especially CFL. So
that's exactly it.
Your mind. Yeah.
We were on a CFL draft, and he was at an event, saw Randy Ambrosie. He's like, okay, I need to get a video of Randy Ambrosie making fun of John for losing this draft. And this is before I had lost this draft. And sure enough, the day I had officially been eliminated and James had won, he showed me this great video of Randy Ambrosie basically telling me that I suck. Which is funny because I'm a huge fan of the CFL's global initiative. So.
Yeah, right. I can't imagine why he would ever say.
Well, if he'd ever listened to my pod, it would have been a lot harsher than "you suck." No, I am great at NFL drafts, though. Just ones that I run the league and can clearly rig for myself. So,
well, yeah.
But the Blue Jays, honestly, Matt, I think for one, back to the vaccination thing, I think they're going to have one of the most unique home field advantages you've ever seen before, which is rightful, because they haven't really, they should get a bonus home field advantage, what they've been through the past couple of years, having to play down in Florida, having to play in Buffalo, everything they've had to go through to now be at home at Rogers Center. So they're essentially getting a bonus, and that bonus being that there are large portions of other ALS East teams that are reportedly very much not vaccinated, which means you can't come into Canada without doing quarantine. Well, if you're here for a 3-game set over the weekend, you're not going to have time to do your quarantine and come in and out, which means big teams are going to be potentially missing big players. This is such an issue that when the Red Sox just signed Trevor Story to a big money contract, part of the conditions was, okay, so you're going to put pen to paper, you're going to go get your first dose now. That was such a huge thing. They know they're missing big parts of that lineup when they come to Canada. So for one, you're back at home. For two, the fans are going to be going nuts. For three, you're going to have anybody coming here is going to be missing a few bodies. Awesome. Great. So there you got a great home field advantage. On top of that, they're young. They're exciting. I was watching spring training while, half having a nap the other day. Is there anything better than an afternoon baseball nap?
Well, I typically work during the afternoons, but on a Sunday, I guess, yeah.
Right. It's Sunday. It's nice and warm. You're hanging out. It's awesome. I was watching Vlad Guerrero Jr. and the way that he hits a baseball and the fact that he could probably steal bags this year. They look like a team that didn't lose anybody despite losing two big pieces. They managed to fill them, internally. There's still lots of trade talk around the Blue Jays. I think it would take a monumental collapse for them not to at least make the postseason. I think they're in the driver's seat in terms of the AL East. That they play in a matchbox. They're going to be playing teams that are losing their best players. They're young. They're exciting. At the very least, they're going to be entertaining as hell, which, if that's all you want. To me, you're going to see the Blue Jays in a lot of 7-8 ball games and they do have the arms maybe now to win a 3-1 game, which was the difference. But so many young, dynamic game breakers, fun to watch. And I've got money on them to win the AL East, which means they're certainly going to implode. I'm sorry, I Fraser cursed them.
No, that's okay. I'll follow that up with, we obviously look at the season that Simeon had last year and Ray had last year and these big contracts, but I mean, Marcus Semien is north of 30, and he got signed to like a 7-year contract. The first 2 or 3 years of that might look good, but the last few, probably not. Same thing with Robbie Ray in Seattle, right? So I'm almost okay with losing those guys just based off of the years and the money that they went and chased somewhere else. And I don't blame them for chasing that money and that security anywhere else either. I would do the same thing.
Well, and the thing is too, is you lose Semien, but you replace him with Kevin Biggio.
Yep.
Like you have one of the best prospects in baseball that has some big league experience. It has, to me, might be overseasoned at AAA. So you lose him. And put it this way, like in all the national media pieces and all the talking heads talk about the Blue Jays, not one person talked about the loss of Trevor Semien.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, well, so he could hit you 40 dingers. Biggio could hit you 25, right? Was it worth the $30 million a season for an aging guy, right? And as much as we're all going to miss Robbie Ray's pants,
and his grunting when he pitched.
Oh yeah, who like he had some. Maybe it was the pants were just too tight.
Yeah.
But to me, you've seen Pete Walker work miracles with players before for the Toronto Blue Jays, and Robbie Ray was originally brought in to be a lefty reliever, and he wasn't great in Arizona. He has great, tools and fundamentals, but Robbie Ray is not the guy with a career worth of success. It's not like you're bringing in a healthy Steven Strasburg. It's not like you're even bringing in a Zach Greinke. It's not like you're bringing in a guy that's been really good for 10 seasons. You went out and spent all this money on a guy that was essentially rebuilt by one of the best pitching coaches in the big league. So I agreed with them not bringing in Robbie Ray, and I would completely butcher his name if I said it. The other lefty they brought in from Seattle, I'm not even going to try, and with the COVID brain, I'm certainly not going to try. But I like the pieces they brought in. The management is basically saying we're all in. The checkbook's open. We can go out and do what we need to do. They have the prospect capital to make a move if they need to, if this kind of falls off the rails. I mean, we'd all like to see them be a little deeper in the starting rotation. Well, there's 30 other Major League Baseball teams that would like to be a little deeper in their starting rotation, right? So I think it's going to be a great year, and I really think that this could be an absolute, unless a whole bunch of guys got the Trevor Story treatment, this could be an absolute bananas year at home for the Blue Jays, who finally get to play at home. And yes, James, I do think they do have a chance at Ramirez. I just don't think they want to give up the pieces to do it, but we'll see. Alec Manoah. Yeah. Well, Alec Manoah was the name. Yeah. And I don't think you can give up to Alec Manoah unless you have another pitcher.
No, I would agree with that. John, thanks so much, man. We're running short on time, but much appreciated. And we could go on and on about the Rush. We could go on and on about the MLB, and maybe come May, June, we'll have you back on to talk about the CFL, because that's going to kick into high gear here in relatively short order. So thanks so much, John. Much appreciated.
Not a problem, Matt. Hey, next time if I have to self-isolate again, I'm bumping whoever you have booked on the show, because this was a lot of fun. It's been the highlight of my week, because it's been a bad week for me.
Well, it is technically Monday, so technically it's a new week, but I'll take the wins any way that I can get them. So that is John Fraser, former play-by-play guy of the Saskatchewan Rush, joining me on the YXE Sports Podcast for the week of April 4th. Big thanks to everybody for tuning in, whether it was on Facebook, whether it was on YouTube, whether you're listening to the audio version of this. It is much appreciated, and we'll talk to you next time.